Excuse me! Taxi!
This is the 77 WABC minicast.
Let's bring in world-class expert Gordon G. Chang. President Trump is a huge fan of Gordon. He listens to him. Gordon, of course, author of Plan Red, China's project to destroy America, the coming collapse of China, and China is going to war. Once we take care of Iran, are we going to have to worry about China? Oh, boy. Gordon G. Chang, welcome back, sir. What do you think of the deal so far?
I think it was important for President Trump to negotiate and obtain the ceasefire. One of the things it's doing is it's showing the party at fault, because Iran right now has announced that it is reneging the deal by not allowing ships through the Strait of Hormuz, which, of course, was a critical component of the ceasefire. So this has put the United States in a much better position from a propaganda point of view. And that's important because Iran and China have been waging a malicious information war against the United States in connection with what's going on in Iran.
You think that's going to hold? I mean, I was actually just listening, Caroline Levitt, a couple of the reporters last night. You declare a ceasefire, and it takes about a day or so for everybody, quite frankly, to get the word and put down their weapons and, you know, for things to start taking shape, for the ceasefire to actually take hold. Is that what we're seeing right now? Just the fog of fog of war a little bit?
Well, in the first hours after the ceasefire, Iran did fire projectiles into neighboring states. And I think that was one of those things where outlying units didn't get the word. But what we're now watching is the situation in Lebanon, where President Trump said the ceasefire does not include Lebanon, and Iran believes that it does. Now, I believe President Trump, and that means the ceasefire is fragile at this moment. We'll see if the president can put it back together, but clearly the world is seeing that it is Iran that is the guilty party.
Okay, and even if it is fragile, I mean, there is this understanding, like, look, just about 3 days ago, they were saying, oh, President Trump isn't even talking to anybody. They had doubts about that. No, we've been talking to people. There are moderates over there. We've been talking to sane people. There are this Aragashi guy, I think his name is, the foreign minister. You know, these things are tough, and there will be fits and starts probably. But overall, I'm just optimistic, and maybe I should tone down my optimism a little bit.
Well, no, I think that this is going to put the United States in a much better position. Now, we don't know what's going to happen on the negotiation of these peace plans that have been going back and forth, but it shows that when the United States is determined, it gets something. You know, President Trump, he does what he says he will do. And the important message here is that the Chinese and Russians are starting to understand that, because we are seeing Trump accomplish things that nobody thought could occur. So this is really good story for our country, Greg.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. Now, do me a favor, this information war that China and Iran have been engaged in, what does that look like? Where have I seen it? I mean, I guess I know where I see it a little bit in the mainstream media. We wipe out their leadership. We wipe out their missiles. We wipe out their nuclear. We have total dominance. And some people are trying to portray that we were somehow losing. I mean, can you imagine if that happened to America, if they took out the entire cabinet, our entire Navy? Would we be winning? No. So what was China doing? What was the net effect? What were they specifically doing with Iran in terms of propaganda?
Well, for instance, on the 3rd, when we recovered our pilot, we saw Chinese propaganda say that the United States intentionally tried to kill that lost weapons officer who was in the ridges in Iran. This is malicious. This is clearly not a mistake on the part of Beijing's propaganda masters. They were out to deliberately lie, and they sometimes are successful at this. Now, of course, it was a 100% fabrication. We were trying to save that weapons officer. We actually did it, but the Chinese were saying we were trying to kill him. The other issue you point out, and is probably just as important, is that we have a lot of elites, especially in New York and Washington, who are trying to run down the United States, who will go to any lengths to criticize our country and President Trump. And we saw this with charges of war crimes, which we're not committing war crimes, charges of committing genocide. And yet you have prominent voices in the Democratic Party and also in the Republican Party who just hate our president and will say anything, no matter how grossly irresponsible.
Yeah, no, it's really something else. And I wonder about these, the podcast bros. You know, I mean, we used to, there's something up. You know, I just found out that the Central Intelligence Agency is sponsoring Sean Ryan's podcast, right? Who's turned against Trump, turned against everything. And, I don't know. I wouldn't put it past our government to be buying these guys off or setting them up to begin with. They've done that before, Gordon. Certainly they have. So, all right. Going forward, you care to make any predictions?
I predict the United States is going to prevail. I predict that over some period of time, and I don't know what it will be, the Iranian regime will not survive. And I think that when the regime does fall, there will be an era of peace in the Middle East. That after decades and decades and decades, we will see the Middle East flower. And that's because President Trump has established relations with Saudi Arabia, which were really weakened during the Biden administration. And we will see the Gulf states aligned behind America. So you can take that to the bank.
I love it. I have one more question. This big New York Times story. And we can dismiss the New York Times as fake news, but the fact is President Trump does talk to Maggie Haberman, and I think he gave the green light to some of his staff to, help her with this book. But one thing I think is erroneous. They portray the war as being sold to President Trump by Bibi Netanyahu. Now, I know that is not the case. Now, they set it up as though it is the case, right? The meeting and the Situation Room and the sales pitch. I would like your thoughts on that. I'm going to run by a theory I have for you. You know, fine. Maybe he made an effective sales pitch. Maybe he didn't. It doesn't really matter. President Trump has been thinking about these issues for decades. And Bibi Netanyahu, and across from him making a pitch, he's known Bibi Netanyahu, since the 1980s. Quite frankly, everybody has. He's been in and out of power. The guys in the room, and no disrespect to them, but guys like CIA Director Radcliffe, 10 years ago, he was the mayor of a small town in Texas. Same goes for General Kane. He was a captain, for crying out loud. Good guys. They just don't have it's wild. The advisors around President Trump do not have the depth and breadth of, quite frankly, wisdom and experience that President Trump has. I know you may find that a bit of a stretch, but I'm just saying sitting across from Benjamin Netanyahu is not the biggest deal in the world for somebody like Trump. And he does and will and has made up his own mind. That's my thesis, sir. And I would love an expert like you to weigh in.
Yeah, I read that New York Times piece, and I thought that it was wrong in a sense that it tried to say Netanyahu got Trump to start the war, because that piece itself says that a number of people in the room were skeptical of Netanyahu. And that piece also mentioned that Trump had formed views on Iran a long time ago. It was clear that President Trump knew that Iran presented a clear and present danger to the United States, one which I think the president could have made a stronger case when he talked to the American public last week. But clearly, President Trump, I believe, deserves to be in Profiles of Courage, John F. Kennedy's book, because he took steps that no other president would take, and that is to protect the American people from an Iranian regime that had ballistic missiles, perhaps that could reach the U.S., and also very close to having at least 11 atomic devices. So, yes, President Trump did the right thing, Netanyahu or no Netanyahu.
All right. You're amazing. Gordon G. Chang. Nothing like this guy. At Gordon G. Chang on social media. Your tweets are really something, man. Your tweets are amazing. And so are you. Give our best to Lydia, okay?
I will do that, Greg, and thank you so much.
You bet.